400 years ago, St. Vincent de Paul founded a charitable service organization to serve the poor with humility, simplicity, and most of all, with charity. Tonight, we'll learn more about how they continue to this day to answer the call to holiness in the service of the poor. So please stay with us. Thank you, and welcome. I'm Father Mitch Pacwa. Welcome to EWTN Live, where we bring you guests from all over the world. Before we get to our guests tonight, I want to mention that today is a feast day. We have a few saints today, but I'll mention one in particular who's fairly newly canonized only 4 years ago, and that is Saint Peter Faber. He was born a very poor man, a shepherd, and he was so bright that the local priest helped him learn to read and write, and he went to the University of Paris. There, he met up with Ignatius of Loyola, who was an older student, and Peter Faber roomed with him and another young man, Francis Xavier. And Xavier was pretty worldly, but Peter Faber was very spiritual, and he tutored the older student Ignatius. But Ignatius also tutored him in the spiritual life. And Peter Faber not only became one of the first Jesuits, one of the first companions of St. Ignatius, but he was the first one to be ordained, so that when they took their first vows, he was the priest who celebrated the Mass and who received their vows. Later on, he spent himself in giving retreats and in helping Jesuits understand the constitutions, going all over Europe, training other people in this, so that he would be part of the reformation of the church, the authentic reformation of Catholicism that was so much needed. And he died a young man, 40 in 1546. So we Jesuits especially celebrate Peter Faber. Now tonight I have a couple guests who are following in the footsteps of another great saint of about a century later, St. Vincent de Paul, and other saintly role models like St. Louise de Marillac, and from our own country, St. Elizabeth Ann Seton and others. They lead almost 250,000 women in more than 50 countries around the world to address corporal and spiritual needs of the poor in their local communities through this very uniquely Vincentian charism of the Ladies of Charity. So please welcome the former president of the Ladies of Charity and the current executive board member of the International Association of Charities, Marianne Dantuono, and the current president of the Ladies of Charity in the USA, Suzanne Johnson. Suzanne, welcome.
Thank
you. Good
to
see you. Marianne, welcome. Good to have you here.
Wonderful to be here.
Yeah, thank you.
Very good.
And, you know, you're celebrating 400 years. That's a pretty good start.
I'd say it's a very impressive start
Yeah,
for any organization.
I just don't want to say that to the Benedictines, because they've been around 1,600 years, so they'll just,
I know, and you
they'll
might
just
have
put all of us in their place.
And the Jesuits have 100 on us.
Yeah,
too.
and that's,
So,
but that's
yeah,
still
that's
nothing
okay.
compared to those Benedictines. But you are part of what's interesting about your group is that it's a lay movement, and it's actually older than the orders of nuns and priests that were started by St. Vincent. Tell us about this.
In 1617, St. Vincent de Paul was serving in a small parish in Châtillon-les-Dombes in France.
In France.
And one of his parishioners approached him before Mass and said, there is a family who is in a lot of need. They are sick, they don't have any money, they can't take care of themselves. So Vincent preached about this family from the pulpit. Later on in the day, he went down to check on the family, and as he's going to the family, all these women are walking away from the house. He gets there full of food, more food than they can use in one day.
Wow.
And so Vincent says to the women later on, you know, this is very good what you did, but you need to be organized. So Vincent was a big organizer. So he said, in order to be effective, charity must be organized. So in August of 1617, he founded what was called then the Confraternity of Charities, with 7 or 8 women of Châtillon. And these women became the Ladies of Charity. And then in December the 8th, 1617, we received our canonical documents from Rome establishing us as a lay organization of women in the Catholic Church.
Now, were there other lay organizations of lay women around at that time?
Not that we're aware of. Now,
Yeah.
I'm not a historian, but as the story is told, at least through Vincent's eyes, at one point he addressed the women and he said to them something to the effect, and I'm paraphrasing Vincent, so, you know, for 800 years, women have not had a role in the church. Prior to that, there were some deaconesses, but they, by providential nature, you know, faded away, and you haven't had a role. Now you're being called to this role to be servants of the poor. And it was so, in terms of the Vincentian tradition, we feel that there wasn't a group of lay women. Also, if you think back to 17th century France, and what we do know of it is that women were really not in any important roles anywhere. So it would be highly unlikely for them to have great roles in the church.
Except for Queen Catherine
Queen, you
de
had to be
Medici.
born into it. Yeah, if you could get born.
She was influential.
You'd have to be born into it or marry into it. But
Yeah.
other than that, women were kind of always portrayed with a lot of naivete, frivolity, you know, and a lot of subservience to the men, or dependence on the men in their communities. So this was a kind of a very, very revolutionary type of move for
Yeah.
Vincent de Paul, and a very surprising move for at least people who have studied his life, say.
Yeah, I think in Italy, a bit earlier, there'd been the Ursulines, who were founded as an order of nuns to go out. You know, most of the time nuns were in convents and cloistered away, largely for their own protection. And the Ursulines were there to go to the poor and to teach and catechize girls. That was very rare, but that was an order of nuns.
That's correct.
This is distinctive as a confraternity of lay women.
That's
And that
correct.
made a big difference.
That made a very big difference. And it was very successful. You know, he worked with these women. They formed this association, this Confraternity of Charity. And within a few months, Vincent moved on. He was no longer their pastor. He went back to the de Gondi estate, which was closer to Paris, and left these women in Châtillon. The most amazing thing is that within a few months, a plague hit, a famine hit, and they worked way beyond taking care of the sick poor, but organizing that charity on a much grander scale for their community. So the root or the seed that Vincent planted there became an incredible organization of women that people were asking for in the parishes. People wanted, some of the pastors wanted, and actually became a part of the Congregation of the Mission when they were founded. One of their purposes was to make sure that they established these confraternities wherever they gave a mission. So we operate as the first flesh of the charism of charity. Vincent de Paul did a lot of things in his life, as you mentioned. He founded the Congregation of the Mission, the priests, several years later. And then he also founded the Daughters of Charity several years later than that. But the first flesh was these women who began the works of charity.
Yeah, lay women.
Lay women. And they were parish-based initially. By the time, I think around in the 1640s, he was doing much bigger things in Paris and drawing from the ladies, but forming organizations of women to take care of some of the hospitals and the foundling work that he was doing there.
Let's take a look at a clip that we have to see what it means to serve the poor with this Vincentian charism. Take a look at that little clip.
All we have to do is just say, this is who we are, this is what we do, and I feel it will go on another 400 years.
People living in poverty operate out of relationships, just like we all do. And they need hope, and they need someone that responds to their needs and treats them as an individual of worth, and shows them compassion and love, and keeps reassuring them that the Lord loves them, Christ loves them, and he cares about who they are and what they do.
Same thing with the elderly, because a lot of them get very sad and depressed, and they're alone, and a lot of their thoughts get a little confused at times. So you build a relationship with them, and that's what it's about, that we share our faith. We pray together with them.
Children happy when they come in here, and the mothers get that little bit of help here without being demeaning or that they feel embarrassed to be here. Everybody's made very comfortable here, and that's part of what we love doing, and I think they sense the love that we have for all of them too.
I'm very involved with young people because I think the old people, we haven't had a chance, you know what I'm saying? Whereas the young, and they get messed up and they get on the wrong track. I mean, that's where my heart lies.
One thing that we try to focus on is to treat the people that we serve with dignity and respect, not like it's them and us. We try to make them, all of us, be together. I think we bring a bright spot in their lives, what little time they're with us. It feels good to provide that. And truly to look into their eyes and see the face of Jesus. And sometimes you don't want to see the face of Jesus in their face because they're not very pleasant, but you have to stop and think, see the face of Jesus.
That gives a good sense. Y'all brought that clip with you?
Yes.
And it gives a sense, of the kind of perspective of not just getting things done. You don't act like, as they used to say in Soviet Union, apparatchiks, people who do this word like a machine and help the poor and help people because it's your job. It's the focus on the dignity of the poor that is inherent to each of them. And that's a very important element.
One of the things that Vincent taught us was that we were to be Christ to the poor were Christ to us. So it's really important that we behave as Christ, that we see Christ in them, and so we treat them with dignity and love when we serve them.
Well, it fits very much with the gospel in Matthew 25, verse 31 and following, where 6 of the corporal works of mercy are listed. The only one that's not listed there is burying the dead, and that comes from the book of Tobit. But giving food to the poor and giving drink to the thirsty and visiting the sick and clothing the naked, these are very specific things that Jesus asked of us. And when you do it to the least of my brethren, you do it to me. So seeing Jesus in the poor is what he told us to do.
That's correct. He did tell us to do that. And Vincent de Paul, when he went through his own conversion experience, he began to believe that that message was specifically for him. And so he sought out, you know, the opportunities to serve the poor. And he asks us to do the same thing. Many of our women are not in neighborhoods where they might see a poor person, but each and every day throughout the United States, we have over 6,000 women in about 168 communities who actually go to find Christ in the poor. And they could be doing anything, as you saw in the film clip that was taken in various sites. You know, we could be having a store or a center where women can shop for children's clothes, find needed books and things like that. We could be feeding the hungry in a center. We could be giving out drink to the thirsty. We can be educating, coaching, tutoring, all kinds of various activities. And this work we seek out. We look to serve the poor, and that is something that Vincent called us to, and how we are responding today here in the United States.
Well, it seems that, again, you're not only dealing with some of the material needs, which is a good thing. I mean, the poor need that. If somebody has a small child, you know, children grow quickly, and going through clothes that fit, you know, goes in rapid succession, and that becomes very expensive, you know, for people unless they get help. So that's a good thing. But you're also describing behaviors where you're dealing with the mind and the heart and the soul. That you're dealing with body, mind, heart, and soul. The whole person is where you're oriented.
That's correct. And we're also looking for ways to bring about what we call transformational change or systemic change, working with people in poverty to better their situations so that they can eventually come out of poverty, so that in addition to just giving them food, maybe teaching them how to plan, giving them menus, teaching them ways to cook, and giving them clothing, maybe teaching them how to dress for success, or work with them on resume writing, or doing mock interviews so they could be prepared to do jobs. So it's not just giving them the food they need and the clothes they need, but giving them that motivation or that extra push to get themselves out of where they are. They can't get themselves out, but with our help, perhaps they can get forward.
It's not unusual for people living in poverty to have little idea of a healthy, balanced diet. They're happy to get food. And so it's oftentimes high salt, high sugar, high carbohydrates, and high fat sometimes, if they can get in some places. And that has an effect on long-term health, and oftentimes they just don't see other options or know how to do it. So that's an important part of the preparation and training.
And I think when we focus on treating people with dignity, it means we really try to treat them as a human being and have them define what their needs are. You know, one of the things that charity can be is sometimes not so helpful. You know, as Vincent saw on that very first day, you know, bringing a bunch of food to a home that can't be used is not really helpful. In many ways, sometimes we make life hard for poor people. So part of the Vincentian way is to build relationships with people who are poor, to get to know them. And treating a person with dignity means to really try to get to know what their needs are, let them define for us what they need. You know, a mother who's struggling with a baby and struggling to get enough food on the table, you know, she needs sometimes just a kind word. She might not have heard that all day. Sometimes she just needs someone who provides a shoulder that she can cry on. And so many of our women are so involved with their programs that the people know they're there and they can come and they will get that listening ear, they will get that shoulder, and oftentimes they'll get that sense of confidence in themselves that there's going to be a way out, that there's going to be an exit to this poverty. So the whole idea of dealing with the spiritual needs is building up that person, you know, to understand that they were born in the image and likeness of God.
Yes.
And they're just as important as anyone else on the face of this earth. And that they have a role to play, and God is going to help them play that role. And the Ladies of Charity are going to make sure that they get to play it as well.
One of the the main reasons for poverty in our country, the United States, is that children are born to unmarried parents. Number one cause. And because of that, and usually it's the moms who are left to take care of the children. Not always, but usually. Sometimes it's the grandmothers and the aunts. Once in a while it is the father, but usually the moms. And in the most normal and stable of situations, it's hard enough being a mom. It's where grandmothers and aunts and uncles help out, you know, with a baby. Everybody needs help because it's a lot of work. And when they're poor, they don't have much chance at all to get that help. So this is a great way to reach out, because a lot of these folks feel embarrassed to come to church, and which is our fault. If there's not folks like y'all reaching out to them, you know, a lot of times from people from church don't reach out to them enough. So this is a great way. I want to take a little bit of a look at another clip you have about the interaction one-on-one between the Ladies of Charity and some of the folks that you serve. Take a look at that.
If you think about how someone struggling to learn something new learns best, they're going to learn one-on-one best. We invite the women who participate in the academic coaching program to work with our students just like they would have worked with their own children around the kitchen table. It's not that we call forth volunteers who are field experts in a discipline. We call forth people who have great compassion for these kids.
We have some very good agencies that help out, but you know, they come in, they do their thing, or they give you the money, and they go. The ladies, they come with heart. They get that sense of, wow, you thought of me, you cared about us, and you brought us cookies, you brought us the book. They bring the Christmas plates and the Christmas napkins to go with it. You did this for us. So it has that effect of being cared for and loved. And I think with the kids, it enhances their own generosity of caring and loving each other. Somebody does that for you, you do it for other people.
That's another. It's not just infants, apparently, huh? It's also kids. The role of parents in helping kids do homework is immeasurable. So y'all are being able to help these moms sounds great.
Well, a lot of our associations are very involved in education. I can speak to that clip because that's the school where I tutor. And my association goes in there at Christmas time. We give all the first graders books. And most of these children do not have their own books.
Right.
So they're very excited. So we feel like we're contributing to their education, but they get ownership of a book. And we take the cookies, put them on a plate, serve each child at their desk, and it's very rewarding for us, and I think they enjoy it a lot also.
Yeah, it's, you know, getting a book. I mean, I certainly still remember, you know, first books, Scrawny Tawny Lion. I still remember that. It was a good book. I read that a long time ago. It's not last week, but you know, but to have that is again, a lot of people just take for granted, but it's not a priority for a lot of the poor.
And you know, and sometimes you can build into it a little teaching too. After Hurricane Sandy on Long Island, our association worked with a parish that was very affected by it. Most of these kids lost all their belongings. They were starting totally from scratch. And what we managed to do was not only throw a little party for the confirmation class, but we were able to replace their personal Bibles, so that we showed them not only compassion that they had lost everything, but also that this is the important part of your life. So having this is going to help you move on. So there's all kinds of ways that we integrate the spiritual components into what we do.
Sure.
And I think being women of faith, we realize how important that is, not just for the single mom to know that she's loved and that someone is really loving her day in and day out, this God of all of us, but also to know that there's someone who she can put her head on their shoulder, and if it's another woman, and who understands her problems, her pain, and also who has confidence that she can build a better life for her and her child. And we do have confidence in many of our women, many of them. They can build a better life.
Well, the fact that y'all have, for the most part, have gone through raising families, you have not just skills, but a kind of wisdom that is not just something you can write in a book for educators, but it's the taste of what it means to actually accomplish stuff, and you can help encourage women because you've done it, and that's a great gift.
It's a great gift, and it's a great calling. So that I think for all of us, and I think there's a great empathy. A working mom who goes out to work every day and puts in those 8 or 9 hours or 10 hours with commuting, and comes home to a child, maybe a husband too, and there isn't enough food on the table, and the paycheck isn't paying all the bills. Those families need support, and we know how hard that is to do. And some of our women were in the place of some of the people that we serve. We have women who've joined our association because they were helped at one point in their lives.
Oh, that's
so
good.
You have that whole dynamic that, this calling, this Christian calling to serve God, by serving the poor, is something that becomes almost a wonderful cycle of God's love in our communities.
That really, that's another element a lot of people would miss, that some of the ladies who were helped now want to give back.
Absolutely.
That's again, it brings a resonance of authenticity, that it's not just handing stuff out, it's really being there for them.
Something I'd like to go back to that Suzanne mentioned, though, when she talked about a little bit about systemic change. We in America have a lot of social safety nets, one of which is our charities. We've got great charitable organizations in the United States.
As well, a lot of government agencies.
That's correct,
that do
and a lot of government support. And so we have systems in place that work to a certain extent to help people who are poor. But the Ladies of Charity are an international association, and while we have 6,000 women in the United States, there are, as you mentioned in the beginning, over 150,000 women throughout the world. And our sisters in developing countries are doing this work. We in the United States twin with a Ladies of Charity in Madagascar. And the poverty that they're fighting is so amazingly difficult to deal with, because these people in developing countries, they don't have the education systems that we have, they don't have the social supports, and they also seem very susceptible to environmental disasters that wipe out a whole year's worth of work at a time. So we see that, and it really urges us on to keep going, to do what we can do, not only here, but also internationally, to help poor people in these countries.
I worked in the third world, and in a lot of ways, the poor in this country are equivalent to middle class people in other countries. I saw that in Peru, for instance. What was a middle class neighborhood was not really as nice, and the things they had were not as nice as our poor. And I suspect that it's great for our poor to also realize how difficult the poor have it in other places. I remember meeting a white woman who who said, "Oh, Father, I made $30 this month, and I want to give half of it to the poor." You say, "Ma'am, you'd be one of them." But you know, that's the gap between our experience and theirs. So this is great. And you also twin with a group because you two live in different parts of the country. Suzanne, you're in where?
Near Los Angeles.
Near Los Angeles, and you're in New York.
Long Island.
Yeah, Long Island. Yeah, it didn't take long listening to you.
Oh, it happens.
And do you twin to the same place in Madagascar or someplace else?
No, we twin to Madagascar. It's
Okay.
the Ladies of Charity USA who does the twinning with another country.
I see. Okay.
You know, we have in Los Angeles on occasion helped to support a group in Mexico that funds a cancer treatment center. We've done that in the past. I don't think we're doing it right now, but so we are open to twinning with other areas that need more help than they can get for themselves.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, you were mentioning the gentleman from Peru, and it reminded me of something that we learn in our formation as Vincentians, and that is that Vincent de Paul believed, you know, that no one is so poor that they cannot give, and no one is so rich that they cannot receive.
Yeah.
And, you know, his gift was really bringing the different stratas of society together. You know, the poor, probably in 17th century France, really didn't notice all these poor people around or didn't want to notice them, you know. But Vincent brought them into some visibility, you know, and in the same way, he enabled wealthy people to help them. You know, he gave them the opportunity to be holy. So as much as he was ministering in his early days to the poor people themselves, and helping them spiritually, he was also helping the wealthy spiritually.
Yeah.
And I think that bringing those two groups together is one of the challenges we face in the 21st century. We hear Pope Francis telling us all the time, you know, you have to take on the concerns of the poor. You have to find a way. I think one of my favorite quotes during the Year of Mercy was, true mercy, you know, is enabling poor people to be poor no longer. And I think that that's really, you know, the 21st century, we see this poverty in the developing countries. We see the poverty in our own country. And we're being challenged to look around our own communities and see what that poverty looks like. So I think in many ways, you know, the 17th century France that Vincent lived in, and that Vincent formed this charity in, you know, is very relevant to the 21st century now, because we're hearing that call again, you know, and we're seeing it, you know, EWTN, you know, 22 countries this broadcast can go to, you know, so are we seeing?
It goes more than
More than that, okay, so there, you know. But
180 countries.
180, so that even better, you know.
Yeah, I
so,
think so too.
So we have this opportunity to learn from one another and to make, you know, to kind of make our world a better place. And I think that's the challenge that we're being called to do as Christians.
Absolutely. I mean, the 17th century was the beginning of the modern era. And, you know, we're still dealing with a lot of things that developed from there. But we have to also deal with the fact that it's time for a break. We'll be back in 2 minutes. We want to get your questions and your comments, so please stay with us. Thank you. Thank you very much, and welcome back. Just want to remind you that you can do what these nice folks have done from different parts of the country and even locally, being part of our studio audience, and we'd love to have you here as well. If you can do so, please contact our pilgrimage department at 205-271-2966, or you can go to our website, EWTN.com. They will give you information about the scheduling of masses here every day, as well as programs. You can be in the live studio audiences, tours of the studios, and directions up to Hansville, as well as places to stay and eat and all that. Some pretty good food around here, isn't there? Have you enjoyed it?
Oh, very much.
Good, 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 good. All right, well, you ready for some questions?
Certainly.
All right, let's start off with Teresa. Teresa, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Groton, Connecticut, Father.
Great, great. And what is your question?
Well, first, happy belated feast day of St. Ignatius of Loyola.
Thank you. We celebrated that on Monday. Appreciate that.
My question is, I am a prayer warrior. I have been, sick for a long time and disabled. I also am a catechist, but I can't teach at the present moment. I love St. Vincent de Paul, and I'm curious, what can those of us that are handicapped or disabled, don't have rides, etc., what can we do to participate in the Ladies of Charity?
Teresa, that's a wonderful question. Ladies, what do you have there? Well, if someone is disabled, but it sounds like she's not so disabled that she can't be of service to others, but she can't get around, she needs a ride, things like that. What do you recommend?
Well, we certainly appreciate any prayers that she has for those of us who can. Right now, we do not have any associations in Connecticut. We have a way for a woman to be an independent member. She can go to our website, which is www.aic.ladiesofcharity.us.
So that's
www.aic.ladiesofcharity.us.
okay?
Right.
And they can go there, and so she can be an individual. And sounds like, Teresa, one of the first things they need you to be praying for is that you get a bunch of other ladies in Connecticut to get up there and do something now. Come on.
That's right.
That's our first step. And then, as those ladies get started in Connecticut, ask them to give you a ride to get the work done. That sound all right?
That sounds
good.
I like Teresa there. She's ready to go. We just got to get some of the other ones who can walk around and drive to go. Sir, where are you from?
Kentucky.
Kentucky. That's great to have you here. And what is your question?
Yes, I was just wondering, through all the great things you do, through your ministry, the Ladies of Charity, I would assume that after a while, after so much ministering, after giving of yourself so well, that it can take a toll on you physically, mentally, or spiritually. And I was just wondering if the ladies, through their formation, have a way to more or less, to teach you how to fill your cup through maybe prayer or retreats or whatever that might be, to help your spiritual welfare to continue doing this great ministry.
It's a very, very good point, sir. Appreciate that. Ladies, what do you do? Because, burnout is one of the terms that we use in the modern world to describe people who are so exhausted they're just worn out. What do you do to help folks who are dealing with, having given so much, there's no more juice in the orange, it's been all squeezed out?
Well, I would like to say first is that the volunteerism is not a full-time job. So women can volunteer as little or as much as they would like. But secondly, we are very, very deeply rooted in the Catholic Church. All of our meetings would include Mass, Some of our prayer services would include the rosary. We are deeply rooted in the Vincentian charism and the Vincentian spirituality. So we have meetings. It depends on the association. Every association decides their own meeting time, once a month, once a quarter, whatever, where the women can come together, talk about what they do, but they also have spiritual formation. So we would learn about the lives of our saints, or we would discuss some of their teachings that would help to enable us to go on. Every year, our national group has a national assembly. We have mass, we have inspirational speakers. We have time to dialogue and network with women from all over the country. That is very, very refreshing. You know, and also every one of our groups has a spiritual advisor who is a priest and a spiritual moderator who used to be a daughter of charity or a sister of charity. Since those groups are they're getting fewer and fewer, the women in the Daughters of Charity and Sisters. So we have started a Vincentian lay moderator program where we're training women, lay women, to go back and be spiritual moderators to their own associations.
Oh, that's good. Well, though we also, in hearing that, we certainly would hope that more young women would consider the Daughters of Charity. That's a wonderful community that's done so much around the world, including this country.
And I would just add that we also, many of our associations do have annual retreats for their members, have evenings of recollection, days of recollection. So we do encourage that kind of reflection, that kind of time out for our members that really focuses us back on the mission and kind of why we're doing it and what we're doing, and how, you know, God's mercy doesn't run out. So the mercy that we show as we are Christ in the community shouldn't run out either. We've got to keep ourselves really ready to go out there and help the poor people.
Sure. Okay. Let's take another question from our studios. Ma'am, where are you from?
Birmingham, Alabama.
Right here. And your question?
My question's actually twofold. I hear a lot about the Vincentian family, and I just wondered if you could speak to what the Vincentian family is and who the members are. And my second question is youth. Are there opportunities for young people within the Ladies of Charity, and if so, what are they?
Okay. So in terms of this, first of all, we talk about a Vincentian family. Saint Vincent, not unlike a number of other saints, has inspired a number of groups. Ladies of Charity are one. Who are some of the others?
Well, he inspired, obviously, the Congregation of the Mission, which is a group of priests that he founded in 1625 to serve the material and spiritual needs of the poor.
And so you often see that they'll have after the name, CM.
CM, correct. But they're commonly known in the United States as Vincentians.
Right.
They have the name Lazarus in France, but they're the Congregation of the Mission. And that group of priests today maintains that role of providing for the spiritual and material needs of people. They also were very influential in seminary systems.
That's right.
Because Vincent also got involved in the reform of the clergy, so he was a pretty busy guy. After a few years with the Ladies of Charity, what he recognized was that many of the ladies of some level of status who were trying to serve the poor in these little confraternities, well, when he got them to Paris, and they were bigger ministries such as hospitals and foundings, that they needed others that could work on this. So this idea of a group of women who would do this full time, who would be kind of vowed, but working in the community, which again was a very creative idea, he founded the Daughters of Charity. Those three foundations, the Ladies of Charity, the Congregation of the Mission, and the Daughters of Charity, were all founded by Vincent de Paul. The founding of the Daughters of Charity was also done with Louise de Marillac, who was his collaborator, and they formed the foundation of the family. from that.
Yeah, I was going to ask, but what about the St. Vincent de Paul Society?
I'm going to get to them because
Well,
there are
you got
about
more coming.
200. Well, there's a
Holy
lot of folks in
smokes.
this family. A lot of people in this family. It's like the big Italian family I'm in. You know? It's like you find relatives everywhere because that's what really happens. It's amazing. But what happened is that, so those are the 3 foundations that he really began with. And then it grew. You know, Vincent de Paul was not forgotten. He was a saint within 77 years of his death. I mean, he was a pretty impressive man. So he inspired a lot of folks. And one of the people that he inspired was St. Elizabeth Ann Seton here in around 1809. She was founding a group of women to serve poor children in schools in Emmitsburg, Maryland. And through that providential work that goes on all the time in all our lives, the rule from the daughters and of the Daughters of Charity was brought to her, and she modeled her community on that. Okay. Some years later, her individual community, the Sisters of Charity of St. Joseph, united with France and became the first Daughters of Charity here in the United States. Okay. So the Sisters of Charity are all part of that, even whether they're the Sisters of Charity of New York, Sisters of Charity of Leavenworth, Kansas, Sisters of Charity of Nazareth, Sisters of Charity of Cincinnati, they're all part of our family, okay? But they all may have different rules, different founders. Then we get to around 1830s, 1833, I think it is, a little bit later. This man, Frederick Ozanam, is studying in Paris, and he's really quite an interesting academic because he really worried about his faith, and he wanted to really prove to the intellectuals of his time that the Catholic faith not only thinks things and believes things, but does things. And so he began to try to learn to minister to the poor, and wasn't it a daughter of charity, Rosalie Rondeau, who began to teach him how to minister to the poor. Well, he founded the Society of St. Vincent de Paul, okay, inspired by Vincent and Vincent's work that he learned through a daughter of charity. So the Society of St. Vincent de Paul is like one of our cousins. You know, we're really all built on the same very firm foundation of Vincent's life and his principles and his care of poor people. So our family is quite large. There's other groups, Trinitarians, and there's universities. We have 3 Vincentian universities in the United States, one at St. John's in New York, which is where my association is based. We have DePaul University, which is the largest Catholic university in the United States, in Chicago. And we also have Niagara University. And they're all forming Vincentians in many ways. So the family is quite large. And then just to Connie's point on the juniors, you want to take that?
What about the young people? Can young people help out with this?
We have a group called Junior Ladies of Charity, and it's geared towards high school girls. We have right now in the country about 25 associations, but they're pretty much located on the East Coast in New York, St. John's University, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Washington, D.C., those areas. We are continually trying to amend and change how we reach out to the girls, how we present what we do. Every location has their own unique outreach, and it's all geared towards what the girls can do, what they want to do. But it's like hopefully they'll graduate from high school. Generally, they go to college, and maybe they stay with us, maybe they don't. But the hope is that once they're out of college, come back, get their jobs, then they will remember the Ladies of Charity and come back and join us as a full Lady of Charity.
And it's important. I know a lot of our Jesuit high schools, and I think a lot of the other Catholic high schools, training young people to go and minister to people in various kinds of needs, whether the poor, the elderly, people who are disabled or handicapped, etc. That's a very important part of the education, to have them get out and do something and think beyond themselves. It's too easy for adolescents to think about themselves. It's important to get an outward look and see people are worse off.
A lot of the groups do nursing home visits. The girls do that. We have one group who cuts out rubber soles to use for shoes in a country, I don't know where the country, do you remember where the country is? anyway, it's I think it's in South America, but they cut out the rubber soles to get together, cut out the shoes to send overseas or down to South America. Like I said, they get to choose their own projects.
Sure.
So.
All right. I have another question here from the studio audience. Sir, where are you from?
New Orleans, Louisiana.
Great place. And your question?
How are the needs of the poor addressed in their end-of-life care situations?
Well, each one of our associations kind of assesses the needs in their community and the resources that they have, and they deal with that. But it's very interesting you would ask about that question, because it's one of the critical needs we have here in the 21st century, is certainly care of the elderly and the frail. And interestingly enough, that was our original ministry. When we go back to St. Vincent de Paul, it was a sick family, and he wanted them cared for. So he sent the women in to do that care. And so what we know is that as we were reflecting on this wonderful 400 years, is that maybe we should hear that call a little louder, you know, because it's a particular need in our community. So while we do have some associations that are already involved in visitation to the elderly, especially if they're in their homes, that are working with elderly in various programs through other agencies, we're actually in the process of starting up our own home care agency that we feel very strongly that now in the 21st century, we need to follow Vincent's first order, was to go into the homes, care for these people with dignity, bring them, you know, both spiritual as well as material care. And so we're literally in the process of forming a national home care association at this point.
I don't think that that can be underestimated, because we see more and more states taking the solution to the suffering of the poor by offering them suicide. And that, more and more states are moving toward laws that allow euthanasia. And as we see, we did a program last year, I think it was, where in Europe, that call to euthanasia has not only dealt with the elderly sick, but in, some children who have terminal illnesses, they said, well, they're going to die, so let's just cut it short. And the need for us to show that we treat the dying with dignity is, cannot be underestimated. I said this some years ago when they passed the health care bill. Nancy Pelosi said, we've got to have abortion and birth control. Think of the money we'll save. That was her reasoning. And if they want to save money in the first year of life, I guarantee you, she and the others are going to want to have save money on the last year of life, which is more expensive than the first year of life. So this care is very important.
It is very important. And as I said, it came out of a reflection on our history, and we looked at our very first ministry and said, aren't we being called to that now again in the 21st century? And we are. So we are going to respond. We're working very hard on it. It's a national project. And we hope that within the next year, we'll have some people walking into folks' homes to provide them with care. Very imminent. It's very imminent. And we hope that it will start small, but it will build up. And also, I think the group that was mentioned, to also support the family caregivers. Many families, most of the care that's given now, it's particularly for the elderly, is provided by family caregivers. And so supporting them in their work is very, very important to people being able to age with dignity in their homes and in their communities.
Yeah, we Catholics have a lot that we've done in the past. The Missionaries of Charity do a lot of that, especially with people dying of AIDS and other problems. So I just want to give some information out about you. You can go to the Ladies of Charity USA, and their website, as we mentioned earlier, is AIC www.ladiesofcharity.us. And the phone number is 816-260-3853. 816-260-3853. Thank you both for being here. We really appreciate your presence and the great work that you and the other ladies of charity are doing. And I want to give you a blessing. May Almighty God bless you and keep you, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
And we want to remind you that we can bring you this program and all the other programs that we do only because this network is brought to you by you. So as Mother Angelica used to say, please remember to keep us in between our gas bill, your electric bill, and your cable bill, and we'll pay all of our bills too. Thank you, and God bless.